Our speaker tonight, Chief Superintendent John Henderson. John is a long-serving member of the RCMP and had the good fortune to, when asked what he'd like to do, he said he'd like to take over the Air Service, and they gave him his wish. And for the last year, John has been the senior officer responsible for the operation of the RCF's Air Services. So, is RCMP Air Services. And the RCAF, sure, that too. Why not? Anyways.
First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. It's really great. The RCMP Air Services was started up on April 1st, 1937. As is usual when an RCMP unit starts up in those days, we shared facilities with the post office, which we have done in many hundreds of occasions across the country. But 2007, that marks 70 years of RCMP Air Services. 70 years. But it's not just 70 years of flying with the RCMP, it's 70 years of serving Canadians. And while that may sound rather hokey, most of the people here are of the generation that did indeed serve their country in one capacity or another and place value on that, as do the people within Air Services. We serve Canadians, that's what we do. Whether we're flying the Prime Minister from one point to another or escorting a criminally insane individual that the commercial airliners won't take, or whether we're out searching for a lost hunter. I mean, these are all things that serve Canadians. At first blush, you might just think we're just moving people and produce from one end of the country to the other, but we are not. We are indeed serving Canadians. And I want you to remember that as we run through this event today. There's always a bit of a discussion within the RCMP. What duties does a member have to be doing if they're killed on duty to make the honor roll? And in recent years, there's been a great debate about this, and as it happens, 3 of the last RCMP pilots and engineers that have been killed in the line of duty, in my view, the authorities within the organization deemed that they shouldn't make the honor roll. And there's this incredible distinction in the line of duty, confronting a bad guy and perhaps getting shot, as opposed to on duty, driving a police car or some such thing. So this is sort of stuck in our craw over the years, and as it happens today, our current commissioner said, this isn't right, and this is one of the last things I'm going to do before I leave, is I am changing the criteria. And in fact, your 3 RCMP Air Services branch personnel will be added to the honor roll. So for us today, that was a really good day. One of the fellows that I'm going to mention here is actually, his regimental number was 10982, Sergeant Louis Romeo Dubuc. And he was actually one of the first RCMP pilots. You've all seen that photograph of the 4 Dragonflies, and you've seen the photographs of the pilots. Well, this chap was actually one of those pilots. So he was one of the first 8 RCMP pilots. He left the RCMP in the same process by which a large number of RCMP members left the RCMP and took temporary secondment. Most of the ones that left the RCMP, of course, ended up serving with No. 1 Provo Company overseas in England and Europe. Most of them ended up in Italy, actually. So he left the organization under those circumstances and then flew with the RCAF. And unfortunately, on September 27th, 1941, he was killed while he was flying a Royal Canadian Air Force bomber to England from Ireland. So strictly speaking, not an Air Services member, but from our perspective, plenty close enough. So we've added him to our own little honor roll. So just to mark, from a sobering perspective, the other fellows and ladies that have passed away flying RCMP aircraft, and then I will move on to a more cheerful element. But I think it's important to, well, we all recognize this, honor those people that have fulfilled the role of serving Canadians. Staff Sergeant Stanley Rothwell, killed August 6, 1958, British Columbia. Special Constable Joseph E.R. Cormier, aircraft maintenance engineer, killed in the same accident in BC. I'll touch on the AME role here in a moment on these incidents. Sergeant Kenneth Murray Laughlin, killed on July 13th, Carmacks, Yukon Territory. Special Constable Wayne Graham Myers, December 14th, 1983, Vancouver Island, BC. Special Constable Wayne Boskill, killed in an airplane accident on January 8th, 1986 at Wollaston Lake. Special Constable James Frederick Wilson, again the same accident, January 8, 1986, Wollaston Lake. My troop mate, Special Constable Nancy Putcamery, the pilot, December 9th, 1989, killed in an airplane accident in Crossfield, Alberta. Sergeant Edward Mobley, August 15th, 2000, killed in an airplane accident at Teslin Lake, BC, and via the Cessna Caravan MPD. Special Constable Timothy Nicholson, his wife participated in the memorial service today. August 15th, 2000, again the same accident, Teslin Lake, BC. So I've touched on Romeo Dubac, left the RCMP, went to serve overseas, didn't come home. And I touched on Nancy. But all these other folks have equally interesting stories and different things, different backgrounds, where they came from. But they all had that one common thing. I want to fly for the RCMP, I want to work on their damn airplanes, and I want to serve Canadians. So we moved away from, having the open house, and we moved along to the memorial service, and then we're into the open house. And that part of the day was, certainly much more cheerful an event. The objective again is to, where we've been, where we're going, and perhaps have a look at the future, which is why we had an hawker there, and that was kind of neat because it would really look good at the hangar. So we had one of the Twin Otters in from Goose Bay, MPJ. You'll see a photograph of one of these later on. And of course the other one is MPL, which flies out of Whitehorse. So we had several RCMP aircraft on display. We had pilots and engineers from all across Canada because we had cunningly coordinated a number of courses. I just wanted to say very quickly that there were a number of people, Patty Gardner, Terry Judge, a great number of people who helped me and whose bits and pieces I will quote later on as we work our way through this exercise. One of the most important acknowledgments I have to make, and I want to make that right now, is to Stefan, who just spoke. I draw your attention to this line. He was up till 4 a.m. last night putting this together for me. We had a little bit of a mix-up and a mess last week at the national convention, and Stefan said that's not going to happen to you again. RCMP colors, fancy. Thank you, Stefan. I owe you big time. So, the history of the RCMP in Canada, it's rich with legend and adventure and trailblazing and all that type of stuff. You're all aviation historians. You know the state of Canadian aviation 70 years ago, 1937, when we stood up. Things were different then. It was very much a seat-of-the-pants organization. Relied so much more on your abilities. I mean, we had the first 8 pilots we had in 1937. They had all come from the Canadian military. So these were as close, I guess, you're going to find to bush pilots. The use of RCMP aircraft, then known as the Royal Northwest Mounted Police, was first touted as early as 1919, the year my dad was born, by then Commissioner Ellsworth Bowen Perry, who suggested the use of aircraft for northern service and sovereignty patrols of Canada's coastline, in his view, air police service. By 1932, the RCMP were working in partnership with the Royal Canadian Air Force, who provided aircraft and crew to complete anti-smuggling patrols on the east and west coast. This is a quote from the Daily Colonist, Victoria, BC, Saturday, May 28, 1932. Royal Canadian Mounted Police assume new duties, Vancouver, May 27, Canada Press. Completing a flight from Winnipeg, Flying Officer Martin Costello and Flight Sergeant Jay Winnie of the Royal Canadian Air Force have arrived here in a seaplane, which will be used on customs preventative patrols during the summer. They made the flight through the Yellowhead Pass in excellent time under fair weather conditions. Since the Royal Canadian Mounted Police took over the customs preventative service in all parts of Canada, plans have been proceeding to utilize aircraft and personnel of the Royal Canadian Air Force. The machine, which Costello and Winnie brought to Vancouver, will be based at Jericho Beach and will carry out patrols over liners arriving from the Orient and be used as occasion requires in various branches of preventative work.